very important in Postgres. She is a Postgres contributor. She speaks in like all possible events. Postgres, and I am so glad that she agreed to come and talk. And so we agreed that it will be more like dialogue and discussion. And you know what, when she suggested this topic, I was like, oh my gosh, that is something which I like really, it's not even passionate. I think it's a very important topic and people do not talk about it. Like how to do data warehousing with Postgres and what data warehouse means these days. I like, honestly, I thought, oh my gosh, it's exactly what I would love to hear. And also, I had a presentation about data warehousing in modern days at the end of middle last year at the academic conference. And I talked to people about, yes, data warehouse is not what you think it is. What we will do now, before I will give the rest to Elizabeth, I will just run couple of slides where I will just, it will be kind of preface. It will be from my data warehousing presentation, because I think it will like set the tone of the discussion, of the conversation. What is data warehousing in modern days and how Postgres is actually a great tool for data warehousing. And many people still do not realize it. Like, I don't know how about you. I heard a lot about for data warehousing, you still need Oracle, like what's your Postgres can do. Postgres can do everything, okay? No, seriously, okay? So once again, thank you for your support. Thank you for coming. You are amazing. There was a discussion on LinkedIn the other day, like, people are not coming to live event. And I'm like, if you have enough pizza, people will come to live events. But I hope that even you come for pizza, you stay for Postgres, right? Right. Okay. So thank you so much. Yeah, now we will, let me see whether I will be able to get to where I want to get. Carlos, tell me whether I'm still doing the right thing, because now I'm finally done with this talking and I'm going to the data warehousing talking. Okay. Right? We're still projecting, we're still good, right? Okay. So again, that will just kind of extended preview of like data warehousing. So this is a slide from this academic conference, and it has subtitle Theory Meet Practice. Because data warehousing is lots about theory, right? Everybody knows how data warehouse should look like. Okay, so really quick. So why this topic? Because everybody knows what is data warehouse. Everybody knows, oh, you have data warehouse, you have this like star like schema, you have fact table, you have dimension table, you have something heavy, and you have ETL, and everybody knows, which is not true, because that's not what people want these days. Maybe it was true like 20 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, but not anymore. And that's why we want to talk about it. So, evolution. First of all, okay, we're in Chicago. What is this? Who knows? Who knows what is that? No, 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 no. Yeah, which warehouse is that? Which warehouse is that? Yes, yes. No? No, Montgomery Ward. Montgomery Ward warehouse. Yeah. And what is important about it, because everything started in Chicago and all the biggest things are in Chicago, right? So that's the largest data warehouse in the world. So we have it. Okay. So, yeah. All right. Now, first data warehouses. Do you know the first data warehouses had nothing to do with computers and with databases? Who knows about it? Yes. All right. Yes. US Census, 1948. They first used punch cards to record the information, like way before databases and all oracles of the world. Okay, and the idea what is data warehouse was collecting data from multiple sources and processing them in one place and restructure it for reporting. So that was kind of the concept which developed in parallel or like independently with any other computerized systems and any database, right? And first databases, when they appeared, they were not even classified like data warehouse, OLAP, OLTP. They were just databases. I was there, okay? Now, okay. I started to work with hierarchical databases. Then I worked with like network. Honestly, when I first touched relational database, that was like, wow. Because my first textbook in college was Dates book, like Chris Dates book, like one of the super early editions. And it talked about relational system, but you know how the chapter about relational databases ended? Is great theoretical concept, but it will be never used in industry because it requires too much memory. It was not, I mean, I was there, I'm telling you. Okay. All right, so hardware limitations, right? And then finally it was developing, and in 1993, Ted Cott came with this concept of OLTP and OLAP, and then there was star model invented, and I was very much there. And then after that, okay, everybody started to develop researches about data warehousing and first commercial products and multiple tools. And since that, everybody knows how data warehouse should look like. So that's the problem, because since then, people stopped developing any theory because everybody knows everything is developed. Okay, and textbook data warehouse, that's what I just described, is not exactly wrong, but something is wrong. So first of all, data warehouses like will be static. You write once, read many times, which is not exactly true anymore. Then the specific data models, you need to process data, you need to process it and put it into star schema, which is again not true anymore. And you do not need to optimize it because you do it like, you know, ETL can run for an hour or two, who cares? You care when it start running 2 hours, 3 hours, 12 hours, and now it cannot finish until tomorrow. So and then you need specific set of operations. Everything is denormalized. You do not need to do selects. So all of these are like presumptions. In the first one, you need specialized database. You cannot use Postgres because it's not specialized. If you have a real warehouse, you need to do something else, which is, again, we want a question today. And you need special hardware needs. Like ask your manager what they're willing to invest for. Or if you have data warehouse, then we need to have big machine. Otherwise, nope. Why? So, why it does not work? It does not work as we just mentioned, right? Marketing trends include last minute, no need to coexist, update many times, loss of ETL windows. So the most importantly, keeping history changed. We are not only keeping history, we are recording data as is. And what is correct becomes fluid. So all of this, we have totally, completely new concept of data warehousing. So mostly we need to combine the historical data with last minute trends, and Postgres is the best way to do it. So now I am finally stopping talking. I already been talking for a while, right? And now we will hear what Elizabeth will have to say to us about, it's actually not, hold on. I had one important, one moment, I had one important slide because that's what I wanted to say at the end of this presentation. Sorry, I ended it too early. The world is hybrid. There are no more data like OLTP or LAP. In my company, in DRW, 95% of databases are hybrid. So, all right, now I'm actually done. All right, thank you.
Eddie, for your amazing introduction. You are of the fourth program, we're lucky to have you. Yeah, I am Elizabeth Christensen, and while I spin this up, I want to ask a couple questions because it's helpful for me to know who I'm talking to, and I feel like at Meetup you get a big mix. So we're gonna do this a couple different ways. So first I want to do kind of your role. So if you're like a full stack developer, raise your hand. Okay, good number of people. If you're data only, like you're a DBA, all you do is data, don't raise your hand. Nobody. And if you're a developer only, raise your hand.
What do we?
When everybody else is what, a data scientist? What do we got? Analysts?
Data science.
Bunch of
That's
random
that
stuff.
that's a scientist, yeah, saying.
Okay.
That's your end stuff.
Kind of Postgres primarily today, and that's all they do all day long is only Postgres. Almost nobody. Who's doing stuff in data warehousing and analytics space today? A couple of you?
Does
Yes.
teaching count?
Yeah, teaching count, yeah. Okay, a good number of people, okay. Awesome. All right, that's helpful. I have a meetup in, Kansas City, which is not as well attended as this one. But we still have a good time, so it's fun to visit another meetup. Let me take my Zoom link, guys.
Okay, Carlos, can you help her?
Yeah.
No.
Two panelists and attendees.
Do you need to share again? Do you need to invite her
Yeah,
again?
it just like, I closed my computer and it stopped the Zoom.
You can use the link I sent you last time,
Yeah.
like on the email.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Want me to unmute myself? Okay.
Wait, you're already in Zoom. Oh, sorry, you were shooting his slides. I thought you were shooting.
Okay, we're gonna talk tonight about an open source extension called PG Lake. But it's gonna go into a lot of different things that touch other parts of data warehousing systems and lots of other things inside Postgres. This is our disclaimer slide. And I didn't promise anything. I work at Snowflake today. I'm part of the open source Postgres team at Snowflake, which honestly is my dream job. It's amazing. I came to Snowflake from Crunchy Data. I don't know how many of you knew Crunchy Data prior to our acquisition, but Postgres companies all got gobbled up last year, and now everybody works for Snowflake or Databricks. I'm also on the board of another nonprofit, the PGUS, and Hetty and I know each other through a bunch of stuff for that. I also have an online Postgres meetup. I know you guys are all have your meetup needs met, but if you ever want to come to an online meetup, we have a pretty good range of talks. And I also host a large geospatial event every fall for PostGIS, if anyone's into spatial stuff. So, Hetty kind of set us up with this, right? Like we very much have been told that we live in these worlds of transactional databases, analytical databases, and a lot of us are dealing with data models and kind of databases that are 30 years old. Postgres is 30 years old. I mean, it's new extensions, but the actual foundation of it's pretty old. There's a lot of things in between these two things to kind of make these things talk to each other, right? There's a lot of ways you can have a Postgres talk to BigQuery or have, Postgres talk to a Snowflake or Databricks. And I was talking to Casey about this. Casey could actually give this talk. He literally said everything in my talk already. Um, but there's a lot of people building things to kind of merge these worlds. PG Lake is one of those things. PG Lake is an open source project. It's on GitHub if you want to check it out. I'll talk more later about how to actually build it because it's kind of a bigger build extension wise. But super high level, right? It has key capabilities which let you talk to object storage. So talk to files outside Postgres, and you can query those files. You can import those files into Postgres. You can export your Postgres data into those files, and it's sort of an interoperability layer. That also includes Iceberg, and we'll talk a bunch about that. And then there's kind of two primary outcomes that come out of this extension. One is that you can run queries and talk to data and have your application talk to data that is no longer stored in the Postgres storage layer. And that stuff is stored somewhere else in object storage. And it sort of opens up this wide world and a lot of options for building data pipelines and interoperable data systems where you're kind of merging multiple things into one thing. If you need a different diagram to see what I just said, that's this. Postgres talks to object storage and kind of deals with all the different files that you might have in your data lake house, whatever the term of the day is that you want to call it. I want to talk a little bit about file formats and object storage. Obviously, people love CSVs. I saw DuckDB today just launched a CSV downloader from their like DuckDB web app because they really didn't want to, but people still love CSVs. You know, lots of JSON in the world, right? Obviously, that's a really popular format for, especially if you're doing document stuff and you have a document database somewhere in your data pipeline. PG Lake has some really nice capabilities to work with spatial files, especially shape files and other GDAL formats, if that's your jam. And you can also talk out to spatial formats that are maybe hosted online. I have a cool talk on YouTube about that. And then the sort of really big game changer file types for this conversation are Apache Parquet, which is literally just a text file, and then Apache Iceberg. The thing I cannot believe about the data revolution that we're in right now is that the most simple ideas are the ones that are winning. Like S3 is the simplest way you could possibly store data, and it is now the backbone of everyone's data warehouse. And Parquet is also like the simplest way you could store data. And that is literally the foundation of what is going to be the future of data. It's amazing to me that it is not complicated at all. All right, so how many, if you're not super familiar with the Parquet and the Iceberg world, Parquet is just a whole bunch of text files, okay? And the way that people typically organize Parquet files is they nest them in folders. And so, you know, just like your old FTP server, half of you are too young to know what that is. For the rest of you, remember when we had folders that had years, and in those folders we had months, and in that folder we had days? Parquet works like that, and so it's like all these nested text files. And then Apache Iceberg is a project that on top of that basically creates a manifest, has a bunch of metadata, and sort of turns Parquet into a database-like thing. It's technically an open table format. In many ways, Apache Iceberg functions as a database. It has things like schema evolution. So Postgres doesn't have schema evolution today, right? If I add a column in Postgres and I run my migration, that column is now in all of my data. That some people don't want that, right? Some people want their cold storage to be cold storage, and when they add a column, the data before needs to not have that column in it. And Apache Iceberg has a lot of things to really make this kind of compliant archival system. So Apache Iceberg is a bunch of different things. So I talk about Iceberg and I kind of mean the whole stack. Apache Iceberg is technically a table format that the Apache Software Foundation adopted as an open format that is now sort of industry standard. Lots of folks use it, right? Snowflake, Databricks, Amazon is building a bunch of tools. They even have a managed Iceberg product now. There are technically other table formats that kind of look like this that are not Iceberg. There are other file formats that can talk to Iceberg. Parquet is the most popular. In the Postgres world, I only ever hear about Parquet. If you're in a super data streaming Kafka-like world, you may be hearing about Avro. I don't hear about it a ton, but it's out there. There's lots of ways to store this data, right? You can store it if you're on a cloud, you're going to put it in S3 or your Google Cloud Storage or your Azure Blob Storage. If you're developing locally, good luck. Like you're going to be using some kind of local development tool that has been unopen sourced in the last 2 months because apparently nobody wants to let us do local development of data lakehouses. And then there's another complicated layer. On top of all of this, there is a catalog. So the Apache Software Foundation now has a new catalog project called Polaris. There are other catalogs that talk to Iceberg. I think Databricks has their own one called Unity. Snowflake has one called Horizon. The Polaris one is kind of now the open source standard. In the case of PG Lake, Postgres is the catalog, and we can talk about that later. And then you can have any number of engines that you want communicating to this iceberg kind of lake house, right? So this is a completely different way to do data and to get people access to data and to get applications access to data than we have had basically for the entire time that we have had electronic data systems, right? Your traditional Postgres database has a query engine that's built in, a catalog inside of it, a table format, a file format that's proprietary, its own storage, and really nothing other than Postgres can talk to that file system. But this sort of revolution now of open table formats allows really anything, any query system to talk to data. And I think we're kind of starting to really see like what this opens up, not only for Postgres, but for other data systems too. And so the PG Lake project that I was talking about earlier kind of integrates this Iceberg world into Postgres. And so Postgres can do all of the things that Iceberg is expecting to happen, and you can do it all with Postgres syntax. So if you want to, do your DDL, if you want to partition stuff, whatever you're wanting to do, you can just write the Postgres for it, and you're managing those Iceberg tables externally. How many folks here are doing anything with DuckDB? Cool. Awesome. More of you should be doing stuff with DuckDB. It is like, as far as data tools go, like it's hard to find something as useful as DuckDB. It's an in-memory it kind of runs in memory and it queries files in place. And it does lots of things. The people who built it kind of made it to be this they sort of made it as a Python wrapper to talk to files and to talk to really big files. So what you can do things with DuckDB, like I can look inside of a zip file that's like 100 terabytes, but I can look inside it with SQL and I don't have to even unzip the file. You can look at files that are online. You can look at files in, Hugging Face. You can look at all kinds of modeling stuff. I see people do weird stuff with DuckDB all the time that I cannot believe. Like people will tail a huge tail of logs and then they will use DuckDB to just write SQL against their tail of logs. Like if you're doing anything with data and transforming data types, you will like DuckDB.
And ask question.
Sure.
Because actually we are using DuckDB to talk to Parquet.
Yeah.
It's still like you think it's SQL, but it's still kind of like sequential reading of the files. So I think people often forget about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true.
And in Parquet, so does it mean that in the header of Parquet file, doesn't figure out what's still like use the.
I think it has to read the header of the Parquet file to know the data types, right? Like, and to know what's in it.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I mean, still it's like all the files.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it has row group skipping implemented, I believe.
I'm not sure, that's why I'm asking, because my experience, again, I see people in my company using it and it's like slow.
It depends on how you actually implement your Parquet file itself. Sometimes.
That's true.
File is a, the data can do the row group skipping.
Yeah. So PG Lake, inside PG Lake is basically two things: a Postgres server that does all the Postgres stuff, and then a DuckDB server that runs the DuckDB. And the DuckDB server part is what does all of the file transformations, and then we'll talk about some of the other stuff that the DuckDB stuff does. So if you've only ever lived in Postgres, which it sounds like not very many people have, DuckDB is a column storage and a column query engine. So Postgres is row by row, right? Data goes in row by row, it comes out row by row. Postgres has an amazing planner, and it may go out and, federate out a bunch of different stuff and bring all the rows back and group them together, but it's still doing that row by row. DuckDB does things in columns, and all the big data warehouse things, they all go in columns too. And so what this does is, since there's a DuckDB query engine inside PG Lake, you can query data out of object storage a lot faster than you could with kind of a native Postgres experience. So the other thing that you get with a column store database is this kind of idea of like a vectorized query engine, right? Where you've got lots of streams of column data coming in, where your kind of traditional Postgres model is more like single instruction, single data. Those ideas are simplified, and they're way more complicated than that when you actually look at the hardware, but sometimes this is worth talking about. So PG Lake is today an open source project, but we started it at Crunchy like 3 years ago. And so we have customers using PG Lake-esque things today. And then we have, folks out in the world using PG Lake, and then Snowflake has some PG Lake stuff bundled into stuff that we sell. So what we're sort of seeing as use cases emerging are your traditional data archival format, right? Where we're archiving Postgres off to long-term storage. We want a cold storage. Postgres memory is expensive, as we all know, for anyone who's tried to tune memory, and you're trying to make your shared buffer bigger. Postgres memory is expensive, and if you can get data that you don't need to query all the time out of Postgres and into cold storage, everyone is going to be happier with your lower RDS bill. Lots of folks are kind of starting to do kind of sharing stuff, where you're kind of sharing data and using Iceberg as a shared location, where your Postgres can talk to an Iceberg, and maybe your Snowflake or your Databricks or whatever is also talking to Iceberg. But your sort of data lake in that open table format kind of becomes the long-term storage. And then your other pieces are really just engines. But you have that sort of kind of cohesive data lake, and everyone's sharing the data from there. Lots of folks are doing things with upstream staging, so I'm not going to show all of the ways that you can do this, but there's a lot of ways that you can do things in Postgres to like roll data up and then put it in Iceberg. You may not want to put every row and every column that you ever put in Postgres into your long-term data storage. That's probably not a great use of our world's resources, right? But rolling that data up with one of Postgres's many great functions and then storing that in Iceberg is a good model. And then I've seen a lot of people kind of going backwards, right? Where people might be, they have some other system, they fed a bunch of data into an Iceberg, and then they need an application that they want to serve that data. When I started working with PG Lake, I assumed all of the data was going to go from Postgres into a data warehouse. And there are so many people that want to go from a data warehouse to Postgres because they have an application that needs that data. So, this open table format really opens up a lot of options for us. Yeah, so there is this kind of concept of the medallion architecture, which is kind of popular, and I'm just mentioning it because I think some people think in these terms. I can't decide if I do or not. And let me know later in the comments if you if you think about it. So a lot of folks are kind of right. You've got your raw files, your flat unorganized files. You're doing something with that, and maybe you're throwing all of that into Apache Parquet or Apache Iceberg. That's kind of your bronze layer. And then somebody's doing some kind of filtering, you're cleaning that data up, you're maybe not keeping it all, you're doing something with all of that. At this point now with PG Lake, you can do both phases of that in Postgres. You don't need to do that as a separate step. And then you're doing some kind of gold architecture layer, which is kind of the business intelligence layer where you're using some kind of tool to access the data and create business intelligence. But the thing is that you can kind of do all of this now, as Hetty alluded to, you can do all of this inside Postgres, right? Using open table formats and using extensibility, you don't really have to ever leave the Postgres database to accomplish all of this stuff. I'll show you some of the commands. You probably can't see this because it's kind of far back, but just how Postgres talks to PG Lake. You can do things like create table, and then you name the table, and then you load from something else, right? So you can just, let's say you're, working as a consultant and one of your clients has tons of CSV files somewhere else. You can just connect to that S3 bucket, load all of that data into Postgres. That's a pretty nice feature, even if you're not going to do anything with it later, just to connect to data in S3. You can then copy more data. So if you want to create some kind of data stream that's coming from a data lake and you want to copy it from upstream, you can do that. And then the killer feature of PG Lake is what's called like foreign tables. How many people have worked with like the foreign data wrapper? I know, Hetty, yeah. So foreign data wrappers are amazing, right? Like that's like a huge win and it's awesome. This is a very, very similar concept, right? Where you're basically pointing your Postgres at a file format. So at an Iceberg, at a Parquet, at a CSV. You can either, I think this is a pretty killer feature. You can even point Postgres at a wildcard. So you can, and like, obviously Parquet files and these big files in object storage are nested. And so you could make a table that's a bunch of stuff. And so you just create a foreign table. Once you have a foreign table created in Postgres using that syntax, you can do anything with it that you could do with other Postgres syntax, right? All of your features are available now and it works just like a regular table. You can also write stuff directly to other files. So if you have a nightly rollup or you have a query and you want the results of that to just become its own file, you can do that with PG Lake. And then you can do create table using Iceberg, which you can either create an Iceberg table and have your read-write data coming from your application go in and out of Postgres, or you can use, typically most folks are doing something like they have their relational tables and all their transactions happening, and then they're moving that to Iceberg later.
Quick question.
Yeah.
You can point it to S3 or any S3 compatible API, or is it like all those commands you are like previous slide?
It depends. Like, what are you using? Like, it's all S3 compatible. I can't, like, I don't know every kind of storage format that there is.
Local storage.
Yeah, local storage, sure. Like any of your failed projects, your MinIO, your local stack. Like I was just telling Casey, like I'm having this like crisis because I'd like to do all this stuff locally, right? Like we all like local development, and there's like not, yeah, like there's not great options for building an S3 locally. MinIO was really popular for a while, and they just like, I don't know what happened. And local stack was really popular, and they just unopen source themselves. But my demo runs on local stack today because it's still working. Yeah. S3 is, well, maybe someone has a better explanation, but S3 is basically a storage protocol for storing simple text-based files. It started, I'm pretty sure, as a project at Amazon for people to share just text files and CSV files. And it has kind of become a place where people store lots of stuff. Like I think you can store any kind of file in S3 now. I think you can store like videos and images. It's basically like a giant, Google Drive for your company that your application can talk to. Somebody else do this.
Yes, so that's just think of like a place where you upload anything and just goes there, stays there. It's an object storage. So at the end of the day, it's just when you make an API call or you try to access, it understands what the object type is, because when you object on like Amazon free service, it understands what it is based on the metadata and like the MIME type, and assigns values accordingly. So now they have done a better job of filtering and filtering things so that you can download the data, like a tablet data also. So Parquet is something that they're like heavily investing into. They have special downloading ways or mechanisms for CSVs, TSVs, and data, like a DB files, the database files. It's basically just a memory storage. So you can put anything and everything. If there's a way that you can go and upload yourself there, they will store it.
I mean, it started as, a way for Amazon to give people a way to store stuff that they didn't know where to store it so that they could charge you money for it.
It's also very cheap compared to.
It is extremely cheap. That's a really good point. That it is like without a doubt the cheapest storage that exists. It's a real race. It's a real race to the bottom. Yeah, no, it is. It's super cheap. And it's also pretty simple. Like I mean, I don't do tons and tons of complicated stuff with S3, but it's a pretty simple mechanism to connect. Like it basically works like FTP. I know I mentioned that before, but in the way that you connect to it, and then there's like lots of subfolders. And then of course Amazon has, their huge world of IAM rules and things that you can torture yourself with to make sure that no one can ever access it. Yeah.
Asking if that's the S3 bucket in Snowflake using T, or how do the two connect in terms of Snowflake related to the S3?
The Snowflake situation is kind of there's a lot of options. Like if you're a Snowflake customer today and you want to use the PG Lake stuff inside Snowflake, you can bring your own S3 bucket and then just tell, you basically do it through I don't know how familiar you are with Snowflake, but it's like a storage integration. And you basically tell Postgres, talk to this S3 bucket, and then you tell Snowflake, I want a storage integration to this S3 bucket, and then both of them are talking to the same thing. You can also use like a more managed version of that you like just say like, I just put this in S3 and give it to Snowflake, and then Snowflake picks it up through a catalog integration. But it's basically like on either side, it's, 5 lines of SQL and they're talking to each other. So it kind of depends on what you want to do. And how much of your stuff is already in Snowflake. Like if you're managing your own S3 and and you only want to share part of that with Snowflake and part of that with Postgres, you might just keep your own managed S3. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I'm happy to take some more questions. These are great questions, by the way. And yeah.
Like actually runs alongside Postgres. I assume as an extension. But like, what's the advantage of using PG Lake versus having just like a process of DuckDB running using the Postgres like scanner extension for DuckDB directly talking to.
I have not done a ton of experiment. I know that DuckDB has like a little extension thing, and I don't know that much about it. I mean, I know that like this is built by a huge engineering team, right? Like I don't know how many people at DuckDB built theirs. Like this is like a 3-year-old, 4-year-old project. And is like definitely it is definitely built for businesses to use it at like a pretty big scale. It's also very Postgres forward, like in terms of like I know DuckDB has an extension that does this, and then Databricks also has like a lake-based product, which is kind of similar, I think, at a high level, but I don't think that either one of them have Postgres as the primary driver for the rest of the workflow. I think they're a little bit more like you can connect to Postgres, but Postgres is in the catalog. You're not doing DDL with Postgres. That's my understanding, but like I unfortunately just haven't. I should sit down and look into this. I just haven't had time. What has been your experience? I'm curious.
To basically load from S3 lakes that were given by other teams and companies.
Mm-hmm.
We do a little of transformation in DuckDB, then we use the Postgres extension to dump the final results back into Postgres.
Mm-hmm.
And it mostly works well. We have hit a few like edge cases in kind of the constraint support in DuckDB versus Postgres.
Oh, that's literal constraints, like the actual data type, the constraint data types.
The Express DuckDB extension works.
Mm-hmm.
It builds the constraint clause in an incorrect manner that we've ran into issues with. But interested to see it featured.
Well, I think that that's like the most interesting thing to me is like how good Postgres is when you start trying to get Postgres data into other data formats. Yeah, I mean it's like amazing, right? Like you're just like, oh, well, yeah, we don't have like this all these geospatial types, like can't get that, like like all these timestamps and Postgres has a lot of data types which people take for granted and like you get out of Postgres and it's painful. Yeah. Hey.
Sounds as though you're now storing 2 copies of the same data, or is it that Postgres via this extension is reading remote storage and using that as its underlying data store?
It's reading remote storage, so you're not storing 2 copies. That's a great question. Performance is amazing. There's a whole bunch of work that's been done for kind of like basically these NVMe disks that you can get now with like all of this caching. The first time that you query, like if you're going to query thousands and, millions and millions of rows, right? Like it's not going to be that fast. But these NVMe like caching disks are so fast now for the column store data. Like and performance wise, like I can show you a little short demo, but like it's really fast. Like it's pretty amazing. Like in terms of querying like across millions of rows. Yep.
Is it possible for Lake to like basically like move the like Postgres process itself? Like is it safe to rely on that extent? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I have never seen that. I'm sure that it has specific things. Also, the DuckDB, I can show you if you want. Like DuckDB runs as a separate Docker container. So it's a whole separate piece. So like if you go
One of the other DuckDB Postgres extensions, but not PG Lake.
Yeah. I don't know why Docker doesn't want to pull up. Seriously. Docker. I have it. I was using it earlier today. I guess, yeah. Um, like it's running. It's using like a quarter of my system memory. Okay, this is Docker desktop. Like it just, well, yeah, it won't open. It must be like a security thing. This computer this is a Snowflake laptop and it's been known to do some weird stuff. Huh? No, but they lock them down. Yeah. No, I have two bio-authentication mechanisms to check my email. Like it is, oh yeah, no, there's yeah, this is security. Like yeah, they're serious. Um, yeah, like I can show a demo that I recorded because I'm terrible at live demos and I can't ever talk and demo at the same time. So none of you can probably see this, but basically like in a Postgres window, I've just got some SQL. I'm gonna like paste into Postgres. I'm just gonna basically make some tables, right? Your standard kind of IoT. I've got readings, I've got sensors. I'm gonna just piece SQL into Postgres and put those tables in. And then I'm gonna put, data into those tables, like, your kind of standard workflow. And then I've got, kind of this data here. It's like gonna run a little query to kind of look at the types of data that I have, which is probably works better on a better screen for you guys. But basically the idea is I have this and now I'm just gonna basically copy that very same data into Iceberg. And I'm running this on just like a Docker. You can get, if you want to run PG Lake locally, you can run it on a Docker container. And it'll just like a Docker compose file will spin up both the Postgres piece and the DuckDB piece for you. And then you'll just have a little S3. So that'll be like a third container. And so once you've got your data in Iceberg, it'll tell you your Iceberg snapshot. So I don't know how many folks are already doing Iceberg stuff, but snapshotting is how you know if new data has changed or the schema has changed. And Postgres keeps track of that for you. And so in this little example here, like the schema changed, and so Postgres is able to query both versions of the Iceberg data, and then Iceberg has sort of kept that old schema intact. And so I've got this data all stored in my little local S3, and then like I don't know, I feel like I always don't know the best way to like demo data. It's kind of weird. Can we agree? It's awkward. So like how do you demo Iceberg? Like, anyways, like this is a Jupyter notebook that's talking to Iceberg. It's not talking to Postgres, right? And it can do all of this Jupyter notebook can talk to this data. I only had it go to Iceberg and you can kind of get whatever you want out of it. But yeah, sorry, I'm not good at I'm not good at data demos. Not a strength. I'll work on it.
Beautiful. Honestly, like live demos never work.
Yeah, I know. You can't. Yeah. But yeah, I have just a couple more thoughts and then we can definitely have some more discussion. So I think like one thing that I'm really excited about for this is just how much the new paradigm of open table formats kind of opens the world up to a really open source based data world, no matter who your vendors are, right? Like this is all open source, basically the whole stack, if you want it to be, which gives you a lot of choices. It gives you a lot of future proof. Apache Software Foundation is taking care of these projects, which I think makes a lot of this compelling and reliable. And you don't have to stay with the same vendors, and a lot of this is used by pretty big enterprises, and so, pretty reliable. What? I didn't hear what you said. Oh, maximizing. Thank you. Yeah, we talked a lot about building PG Lake, so I probably don't need to cover that again. And then I was just going to mention a couple other things for the Postgres extension world that if you're using PG Lake, you're probably also going to want these extensions. PG cron, which I'm sure most of you guys use, is the like cron scheduler extension. So if you're moving stuff to object storage on some kind of timeline basis, you probably want to do that with PG cron. The person who wrote PG cron works at Snowflake. His name's Marco Slot, and I work with him a lot. And he built an extension called PG incremental that pairs with PG cron that does an incremental append on a cron schedule. And so that's kind of part of that sort of like automatic archiving world. And then I'm a huge fan of Postgres partitioning, as I'm sure are most of you. So using something like PG Partman to have your tables partitioned, and then if you pair that with PG incremental and PG cron, you can just automatically drop table partitions on a schedule and put those in your object storage. And we have a little like command. It's called Cortex Code. Snowflake has its own kind of little AI. What do you call it? An AI assistant? I don't even know what they're called anymore. An agent? I forgot the word. I use AI so much. I don't have any vocabulary left. The thing that does all my work for me. Anyways, and it works with any Postgres, and it has some PG Lake skills built into it. So, if you're interested in finding a little coding assistant for PG Lake stuff, we have that. Yeah, that's all I have for you guys. Yeah. Somebody want to switch the lights on and we can talk more about data? Should I take it personally that you wanted me to do my whole
that, okay, we have a hybrid world and everybody needs to be aware of data warehouse is not something sitting there and static. Data warehouse is alive. That's why we need tools like this, because we always need to incorporate today's data. I work in trading. Okay, we need today's data in trend analysis. It's like no way to go without it. So I think that it's very valuable tool. And yeah, I think that everybody should try it actually.
Or a different flavor
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
So many choices now.
Yes, yes, yes. All right. So and I first I want to thank Elizabeth for her amazing talk, last night. And I neglected to mention when I was doing my talk in the beginning that Snowflake sponsored our pizza today. Thank you, Snowflake. Like I'm not in DRW anymore. DRW not paying for the pizza, so thank you, Snow. And another thing, I don't know whether we should project or you can like stop by. I forgot to give you the code because I told several people here that I know PG Data is here. I know you can decide last moment, but we are submitting catering order like in a week. Okay, so if you think you are going to go, we would really, really, really love you to register and just to kind of speed you up and to acknowledge the Chicago innovations. We have EA discount code, and you still try to share it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you can, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
Oh, it's,
So,
I don't know.
this code is, uh, okay, so that is 20% of your registration if you register by by May, yeah?
If you're a student, can you use that as well?
Yes, 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 yes. You will get for free version, right? For all ticket types, yes, yes. Right. Everybody got it because I'm going to turn a light on because I know it's too dark. It has no screen, unfortunately, you know? Yeah.
Wait, hold on.
Yes, yes. So please help me to submit the realistic catering report.
All right.
Tell me when I can do the lights back on.
Oh, I'm good.
I think we're good.
I'm good.
Okay, all right. Okay, so again,